The call came at 7:52 on a Monday morning, before I had taken off my hard hat. I had just finished the 6 a.m. walkthrough of the Eastern production floor, the one I did every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, the one I had been doing for 17 years. The one that had never once turned up a violation I hadn't already caught and corrected before any inspector ever set foot in the building. I was standing at the equipment cage near line 4, signing off on the weekly inspection log, when my phone buzzed with a calendar notification. Meeting request. 8:15 a.m. Conference room Delta. Attendees: Lena Marsh, HR, Derek Callum, Plant Director. No subject line. I looked at the notification for a moment. Then I looked at the inspection log in my hand. Then I finished signing it, clipped my pen back to my vest, and walked to conference room Delta. I did not hurry. I had 17 years of signed inspection logs. I had nothing to hurry about. Or so I thought. My name is Sonia Vega. I am 46 years old, and for 17 years I was plant safety manager at Caldwell Industrial Manufacturing, a mid-sized metal fabrication facility in Akron, Ohio. We made structural components, brackets, load-bearing frames, precision-cut panels for commercial construction and heavy equipment manufacturers. The kind of parts that end up inside buildings and machines that people depend on not to fail. My job was to make sure the people who made those parts went home at the end of their shift. In 17 years, I had reduced Caldwell's recordable injury rate from 8.4 incidents per 100 workers to 1.1. The industry average was 3.7. I had built the Caldwell Safety Compliance Matrix, a documentation system that tracked every piece of equipment, every chemical storage protocol, every lockout-tagout procedure, and every employee certification in real time. Before I built it, OSHA had cited Caldwell for 11 violations in a single inspection in 2007. After I built it, we had gone 9 years without a single citation. I had also negotiated Caldwell's workers' compensation insurance premium down from $1.2 million annually to $680,000 by demonstrating our injury rate reduction to the carrier. That $520,000 in annual savings had been paying for itself every year for 6 years. I had missed my father's 70th birthday dinner because we had a chemical storage audit the following morning and I needed to be on site at 5 a.m. I had taken 4 sick days in 17 years, 2 of which were for a kidney stone that my doctor told me required bed rest and that I spent reviewing compliance documentation from my couch. I tell you this because I want you to understand what 17 years of careful, unglamorous, life-protecting work looks like. And I want you to understand what it means when someone decides that work is an inconvenience. Derek Callum arrived at Caldwell Industrial Manufacturing in January of that year. He was 38 years old, and he was the new plant director, and he was the son-in-law of Gerald Caldwell, who had founded the company in 1989 and who had, at 71, decided he was ready to hand the operational reins to family. The family he chose was Derek. I want to be precise about what I mean when I say Derek Callum did not belong in a manufacturing facility. I do not mean he was unintelligent. I mean he had spent his career in commercial real estate, had never managed a production floor, had never read an OSHA standard, and arrived at Caldwell wearing a sport coat and dress shoes on a day when the temperature on the production floor was 41 degrees and everyone else was in insulated work gear and steel-toed boots. He walked the floor on his first day with Gerald Caldwell beside him, and he looked at the equipment the way someone looks at a piece of abstract art, with the expression of a person who is trying to appear thoughtful while understanding nothing. My floor supervisor, a 22-year veteran named Ray Kowalski, who communicated primarily through a combination of silence and very specific eyebrow movements, fell into step beside me during that first walkthrough. "Sport coat," Ray said quietly. "I see it." "Dress shoes." "I see those too." "He's going to be a problem," Ray said. "Let's wait and see," I said. We did not wait long. In his second week, Derek attended the monthly safety review meeting, which I ran in the main conference room. We called it the bullpen because it had no windows and the acoustics made every conversation sound like it was happening inside a metal drum. He sat at the head of the table, which was Gerald Caldwell's seat, and he opened a leather portfolio and wrote nothing in it for 45 minutes. I walked the team through the monthly compliance metrics, equipment inspection completion rates, near-miss incident reports, chemical inventory reconciliation, certification renewal status for the 43 employees whose certifications were due in the next 90 days. When I finished, Derek said, "These protocols, how much production time are we losing to them per week?" I looked at him. The inspection and certification protocols? All of it. The walkthroughs, the documentation, the what did you call it, the lockout-tagout procedures. How much time per week is that pulling from the line? Approximately 4 hours per line per week, I said. Across 6 lines, that's 24 hours. He wrote something in his portfolio. And what's the cost of that in output? The cost of not doing it, I said, is 11 OSHA violations in a single inspection, which is what happened in 2007, before the current protocols were in place. He looked at me with the expression of someone who has decided that the person speaking is being difficult. I'm asking about productivity optimization, Sonia. I'm not asking about 2007. My compliance coordinator, a meticulous and quietly furious woman named Diane Cho, who had been with me for 9 years and who expressed her feelings through the precision of her note-taking, wrote something in her own notebook. She turned it slightly so I could see it. It said, "Productivity optimization." I looked at my own notes and said nothing. In his 4th week, Derek presented a operational efficiency roadmap to the plant's senior leadership team. The roadmap proposed reducing the weekly safety walkthrough schedule from 3 days to 1, eliminating the pre-shift equipment inspection checklist for lines that had not reported an incident in the previous 30 days, and consolidating the chemical storage documentation process from daily to weekly. Every single one of those proposals was an OSHA violation, not a potential violation, not a gray area, a direct, documented, citable violation of federal workplace safety standards. I said so, in the meeting, calmly, specifically, with the relevant OSHA standard numbers cited from memory. Derek said, "I appreciate the regulatory perspective, Sonia, but I think we need to balance compliance with operational agility." Operational agility. Ray Kowalski, who was sitting 2 seats down from me, looked at the table. His jaw moved slightly, which was the Ray Kowalski equivalent of a full emotional breakdown. Diane wrote something in her notebook. I did not look at it this time. I already knew what it said. I documented the meeting. Date, time, attendees, every proposal Derek had made, every OSHA standard it violated, my objections, and his response. I sent the documentation to my own personal email that evening, as I had been doing with every significant meeting since Derek's 2nd week. I had started the personal email archive on January 19th, the day after Derek's first safety review meeting. I had been sending myself documentation every week since then. By the time of the operational efficiency roadmap meeting, I had 11 weeks of records. I want to be clear about why I did this. I did not do it because I was planning anything. I did it because I had spent 17 years understanding that the difference between a safe facility and an unsafe one is documentation, and that the same principle applies to the difference between a protected employee and an unprotected one. I documented things. It was what I did. In his 6th week, Derek began holding one-on-one meetings with the line supervisors without telling me. I know this because Ray told me, in the particular way Ray tells me things, standing in the doorway of my office, arms crossed, expression suggesting he has been thinking about whether to say something for several days and has decided the answer is yes. He's been talking to the line supervisors, Ray said. About what? About which safety protocols they find most disruptive to production flow. I looked at Ray. And what are they telling him? Some of them are telling him what he wants to hear, Ray said. Because he's the plant director and he's Gerald Caldwell's son-in-law and they have mortgages. And the others? The others are coming to me afterward and asking what's going on. Tell them to do their jobs, I said. Follow the protocols. Document everything. Ray looked at me for a moment. You're building something. I'm being thorough, I said. It's what I do. He nodded once and went back to the floor. The meeting in conference room Delta on that Monday morning in March lasted 11 minutes. I know because I checked my watch when I sat down and again when I stood up. Lena Marsh, the HR director, was a woman who had been at Caldwell for 4 years and who had the quality of someone who has been asked to deliver a message she did not write and does not agree with, but has decided her professional obligations require her to deliver it anyway. She sat to my left with a folder in front of her and did not open it until Derek nodded at her. Derek sat at the head of the table. He was wearing a different sport coat. He had not learned about the temperature on the production floor in 6 weeks. Lena opened the folder. Sonia, we're making some structural changes to the plant's operational leadership. Your position as plant safety manager is being eliminated as part of a reorganization that will integrate safety functions into the operations team under Derek's direct oversight. I looked at the folder, then at Derek. He said, "We appreciate everything you've contributed, Sonia, but we need to move toward a more agile safety model that doesn't create friction with production goals." A more agile safety model. I said, "I see." Lena said, "We're offering a severance package of." "I'll review it with my attorney," I said. Lena closed the folder. Derek looked at me with the expression of someone who expected more resistance and is not sure whether the absence of it is a good sign. It was not a good sign. Not for him. "Is there anything you'd like to say?" Derek asked. I thought about 17 years. About 8.4 incidents per 100 workers, becoming 1.1. About $520,000 in annual insurance savings. About 43 employees whose certifications were due in the next 90 days and who would now be working on equipment they were not legally certified to operate if nobody tracked the renewals. "Good luck," I said. I stood up, shook Lena's hand, not Derek's. Walked out. Ray was on the floor when I came back to collect my things from my office. He saw my face, or rather, he saw the particular quality of my face that is indistinguishable from my normal face, but that Ray, after 9 years of working alongside me, has learned to read, and he walked over. "They did it," he said. "Yes. What do you need?" "Nothing right now. Keep doing your job. Follow every protocol. Document everything." He looked at me for a long moment. "Sonia, what are you going to do?" "I'm going to file some paperwork," I said. I packed my office in 35 minutes. Diane stood in the hallway and watched. She had the expression of someone who is holding very still because she is afraid that if she moves she will say something that cannot be unsaid in a professional environment. I handed her the master key to the Caldwell Safety Compliance Matrix system. The 43 certification renewals are due in the next 90 days. The list is in the red folder in the top left drawer. She took the key. "I know where the list is." "I know you do. Sonia." Her voice was very controlled. "This isn't right." "No," I said. "It isn't." I carried my box to my car. Sat in the driver's seat. The Caldwell Industrial parking lot in March has the particular quality of a place that is functional and unglamorous and entirely indifferent to the feelings of the people who use it. Gravel. Chain-link fence. The sound of the production floor audible even from the parking lot, a low mechanical hum that I had been hearing 5 days a week for 17 years. I sat with that sound for exactly 3 minutes. Then I opened my laptop. What they did not know, what Derek Callum, in 6 weeks of sport coats and operational agility frameworks, had not thought to ask about, was what I had been doing for the 17 years before he arrived. I had not just been running safety protocols. I had been building a record. The Caldwell Safety Compliance Matrix was not just a tracking system. It was a living document of every safety condition at that facility, every piece of equipment, every chemical, every procedure, every certification, every near miss, every corrective action. It was the most complete picture of the plant's safety status that existed anywhere. And I had been the one who built it, maintained it, and updated it every single day for 9 years. I no longer had access to the system. I had handed Diane the master key. But I had my personal email archive. 11 weeks of meeting documentation. And I had something else. 17 years of institutional knowledge about exactly which conditions at Caldwell Industrial Manufacturing were being held in compliance by my protocols and would stop being held in compliance the moment those protocols were reduced or eliminated. I knew where every risk was. I knew which equipment had been flagged in the last 6 months and corrected before it became a violation. I knew which chemical storage areas required daily monitoring to stay within OSHA's permissible exposure limits. I knew which lockout-tagout procedures, if skipped even once, created an immediate citation risk. I knew all of it. I had documented all of it. And I had been sending myself that documentation every week since January 19th. I opened the OSHA online complaint portal. The formal name is the OSHA online complaint form. It allows any person, employee, former employee, or member of the public to file a complaint about workplace safety conditions at a specific facility. Complaints can be filed anonymously. They can also be filed with full identifying information, which triggers a higher priority inspection response. I filed with my full name, my title, my 17 years of service, and my termination date of that morning. I was not anonymous. I had nothing to be anonymous about. The complaint was 41 pages. I had been drafting it since February 14th, the day after Derek presented the operational efficiency roadmap and proposed eliminating the pre-shift equipment inspection checklist. I had updated it every week as new information became available. It documented, with specific OSHA standard citations, every condition at Caldwell Industrial Manufacturing that was currently in compliance due to my protocols, and that would fall out of compliance if those protocols were reduced or eliminated as Derek had proposed. I did not allege that violations currently existed. I documented the conditions that would produce violations the moment the protocols maintaining them were removed. I submitted the complaint at 10:23 a.m., sitting in the Caldwell Industrial parking lot, with the sound of the production floor humming behind me. Then I called my attorney. Her name was Patricia Osei, and she specialized in employment law and workplace safety litigation, and she had the quality of someone who has heard a great many things that would alarm most people and responds to all of them with the same measured, methodical calm. I walked her through the morning. She was quiet for a moment. "You filed the OSHA complaint before you left the parking lot?" "Yes." "With your full name?" "Yes." "And you have 11 weeks of documented meeting records showing the plant director proposing specific protocol reductions that constitute OSHA violations." 41 pages. Another pause. "Sonia, how long have you been preparing this?" "Since February 14th, I said. The day after he proposed eliminating the pre-shift inspection checklist." "And you didn't tell anyone?" "I told Ray to document everything. I didn't tell him why." "Good." Her voice shifted into the register of someone who is already thinking 3 steps ahead. "The OSHA complaint will trigger an inspection. Given the specificity of what you filed, they'll prioritize it. Could be days, could be 2 weeks." "I know. And in the meantime, you have a wrongful termination claim and a potential retaliation claim if they try to interfere with the complaint process." "I assumed as much." "Sonia." A pause. "What do you think they're going to find when they inspect?" "I thought about the 43 certification renewals due in 90 days. About the pre-shift inspection checklist Derek wanted to eliminate. About the chemical storage monitoring that required daily documentation to stay within permissible exposure limits. About the lockout-tagout procedures that 3-line supervisors had told Derek they found disruptive to production flow. About what happens to a facility that has been held in compliance by one person's daily attention when that person is no longer there." "Enough," I said. Patricia said, "I'll start preparing the retaliation filing." "Thank you." I started the car. Pulled out of the gravel lot. The mechanical hum of the production floor faded behind me. My phone buzzed at 11:15. A text from Derek Kellum. "Sonia, I just want to make sure we're on the same page about the transition and that there aren't any misunderstandings about the nature of the restructuring. I'd really like to connect this week to discuss a smooth handoff of your documentation." A smooth handoff of my documentation. I read it once. Then I forwarded it to Patricia and put my phone in my bag. At 2:30 that afternoon, Diane texted from her personal phone. She never texted from her personal phone. "Derek held an all-hands this morning after you left. He told the floor supervisors that the Monday and Wednesday walkthroughs are suspended effective immediately and that the pre-shift checklist is now optional for lines with clean 30-day records." Ray walked out of the meeting. "He's in his truck in the parking lot and he won't come back in." I read that twice. Derek had not waited a single day. The pre-shift inspection checklist was the first line of defense against equipment failures on the production floor. It was the procedure that caught the hydraulic pressure irregularity on line 3 in 2019 before it became a catastrophic failure. It was the procedure that had kept Caldwell's injury rate at 1.1 per 100 workers for the last 4 years. He had made it optional on the same morning he fired the person who built it. I texted Diane back, "Tell Ray to come inside. Do his job. Follow every protocol regardless of what Derek said. Document every instruction Derek gives that deviates from the established safety procedures. Personal phone only." She replied in 40 seconds, already documenting. Sonia, he also told the chemical storage team that the daily monitoring logs are being moved to weekly. Effective today. I sat with that for a moment. The daily chemical monitoring logs were not a preference. They were not a productivity optimization opportunity. They were the specific procedure that kept the solvent storage area on the west side of the facility within OSHA's permissible airborne exposure limits for the workers on that side of the floor. Moving them to weekly meant that for 6 days out of every 7, nobody would know whether the exposure levels were within legal limits. I called Patricia. "He's already implementing the changes," I said. "Today? This morning?" "Same day." She was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. "That's going to be very relevant to the OSHA inspector." "I know, Sonia." Her voice was careful. "How many violations do you think they're going to find?" I thought about the 41 pages. About the chemical storage monitoring. About the pre-shift checklist. About the 43 certification renewals that were now nobody's job. About the lockout-tagout procedures that 3 supervisors had already told Derek they found disruptive. About a facility that had gone 9 years without a single OSHA citation because one person had been paying attention every single day, and what happens to that facility on day 1 of that person's absence. "More than he's ready for," I said. My phone buzzed again at 4:47 that afternoon. Not Derek this time. Ray, from his personal phone. Line 2 pre-shift checklist wasn't run this morning. Operator reported a grinding noise in the press mechanism at 3 p.m. Supervisor told him to keep running. I shut it down myself. Derek is furious. He's saying I overstepped. I read that message 3 times. A grinding noise in a press mechanism on a line that had skipped its pre-shift inspection. On the first day, the pre-shift checklist was made optional. Ray had shut it down. Ray, who had been on that floor for 22 years and who knew exactly what a grinding noise in a press mechanism meant, had done the right thing and was now being told he had overstepped. I texted back, "You did the right thing. Document it." Time, the operator's name, the supervisor's name, what Derek said, exact words. "Send it to me tonight." He replied, already written down. "Sonia, this place is going to fall apart." I looked at that message for a long moment. Then I typed, "I know. That's why I filed the paperwork." He didn't reply for a minute. Then, "What paperwork?" I put my phone down. He would find out soon enough. They all would. The OSHA inspector was going to find out first. The OSHA inspector arrived on a Thursday morning, 9 days after I filed the complaint. I know it was 9 days because I had been counting. Not anxiously. The way you count anything you have been expecting, with the particular patience of someone who knows the outcome and is simply waiting for the calendar to catch up. Patricia called me at 7:18 a.m. They're there. 2 inspectors. Unannounced, which means they took the complaint seriously. I assumed they would. The complaint was 41 pages, Sonia. They took it very seriously. I made coffee. Sat at my kitchen table. Waited. Ray texted me at 8:04 from his personal phone. 2 OSHA inspectors just walked in the front door. Derek went white. I mean actually white. Like the color left his face in real time. I read that and thought, 9 days. Derek Callum had 9 days to reverse the protocol changes he had implemented on the morning he fired me. He had 9 days to reinstate the pre-shift inspection checklist, restore the daily chemical monitoring logs, and begin tracking the 43 certification renewals that were now 43 days closer to expiring. He had not done any of those things. I know this because Diane had been texting me every 3 days with updates from her personal phone, in the careful and methodical way of someone who has been documenting things for 9 years and understands exactly what documentation is for. The pre-shift checklist was still optional. The chemical monitoring logs were still weekly. The certification renewals were still nobody's job. And on the previous Tuesday, Derek had held another all-hands meeting in which he described the OSHA complaint as a disgruntled former employee trying to create friction and told the floor supervisors that the inspectors, if they came, would find nothing because Caldwell was operating within all relevant productivity benchmarks. Productivity benchmarks. OSHA does not inspect productivity benchmarks. The inspection lasted 2 days. I know what they found because the citation report became public record, and because Patricia obtained a copy the day it was issued, and because Ray texted me a photograph of the posted notice that OSHA requires facilities to display when citations are issued. 23 violations. I want to be precise about that number. 23. In a facility that had gone 9 years without a single citation. In 9 days, Derek Callum had taken a facility with a 9-year clean record and produced 23 citable violations, including 4 classified as serious, meaning conditions that presented a substantial probability of death or serious physical harm. The 4 serious violations were the suspended pre-shift equipment inspection protocol on lines 2, 4, and 5, the reduced chemical monitoring frequency in the solvent storage area, 3 employees operating equipment with expired certifications because nobody had tracked the renewal schedule, and a lockout-tagout procedure that had been verbally waived by a line supervisor following Derek's all-hands meeting. The total proposed penalty was $3.2 million. The plant was ordered to abate all violations within a specified timeframe. For the 4 serious violations, the abatement deadline was immediate, meaning the affected lines had to stop operating until the violations were corrected. Lines 2, 4, and 5 went dark. By the end of the 2nd week, the darkness had spread. Caldwell Industrial manufactured structural components for commercial construction and heavy equipment clients. Their largest client was a construction firm called Meridian Build Group, based in Columbus, which had a standing annual contract worth $4.8 million and which had been ordering from Caldwell for 11 years. Meridian's procurement director, a man named Stuart Haynes who had been managing the Caldwell relationship for 6 of those 11 years, called Caldwell's sales team on the Thursday the citation report was posted. He asked about the OSHA violations. The sales team escalated to Derek. Derek called Stuart Haynes directly. I know this because Ray was in the building when the call happened and could hear Derek's side of it through the closed door of the plant director's office, which had the particular acoustic quality of a room that was not designed for privacy. Ray texted me afterward. He told the client the violations were administrative in nature and that the plant was proactively optimizing its compliance posture. The client asked which lines were shut down. Derek said, temporarily paused for enhancement. The client asked when they'd be back online. Derek said, imminently. The client said he'd be talking to his legal team. Administrative in nature. Lines 2, 4, and 5 were not administratively paused. They were shut down by federal order because the conditions on those lines presented a substantial probability of serious physical harm to the workers operating them. Stuart Haynes called back the following Monday and informed Caldwell's sales team that Meridian Build Group was placing its orders on hold pending resolution of the OSHA matter. For $0.8 million in annual business on hold. The sales team escalated to Gerald Caldwell. This was the moment the situation stopped being Derek's problem and became a family problem. Gerald Caldwell had founded this company in 1989. He had built it from a 12-person machine shop into a 340-employee manufacturing facility. He had spent 35 years making sure that facility ran correctly, safely, and profitably. He had handed operational control to his son-in-law in January because he trusted him. He called Derek into his office on a Tuesday morning. Ray was not in the room, but the plant has the particular quality of a building where significant conversations have a way of becoming known, and by afternoon the substance of the meeting had reached Diane, who texted me that evening. Gerald had asked Derek to explain the 23 violations. Derek had said the violations were the result of legacy protocol inefficiencies that he had been in the process of modernizing. Gerald had asked why the modernization had begun on the same day the safety manager, with 17 years of service, had been terminated. Derek had not had a good answer for that. Gerald called Patricia Osei the next morning. Patricia called me at 9:30. Gerald Caldwell wants to meet with you. When? He said as soon as possible. He used the phrase "as soon as possible" twice. What does he want? He wants you to come back. A pause. He's offering your previous salary plus a 20% increase and the title of Senior Safety Director. I thought about that for exactly the amount of time it deserved. No, I said. Patricia was quiet for a moment. That's a significant offer. It's the wrong offer, I said. Tell him I'll meet with him. But I'll be bringing my own terms. She said, I'll set it up. I want to tell you about the phone call I received 2 days before the Gerald Caldwell meeting, because it is the part of this story that I think about most when I think about what Derek Callum actually understood about the situation he had created. He called me from his personal cell phone at 6:47 p.m. on a Wednesday. I answered because I recognized the number and I wanted to hear what he would say. Sonia. His voice had the quality of someone who has been rehearsing a conversation and has already forgotten the script. I think we got off on the wrong foot, and I want to fix that. I'm prepared to bring you back as a consultant, significant day rate, flexible schedule. You'd basically be setting your own terms. I just need you to help us get through this OSHA situation and get the lines back online. I said, Derek. Yeah. You told your floor supervisors that my OSHA complaint was a disgruntled former employee trying to create friction. A pause. I was trying to manage the team's anxiety. You made the pre-shift checklist optional on the morning you fired me. You moved the chemical monitoring logs to weekly the same day. You have 3 employees operating equipment with expired certifications because you eliminated the tracking system that prevented that. Sonia, I understand there were some implementation issues. 23 violations, I said. In 9 days. He was quiet. I'll see you at the meeting with Gerald, I said. Don't call me again before then. I ended the call. The meeting with Gerald Caldwell was held in his personal office on the 2nd floor of the Caldwell Industrial Administrative Building, not a conference room, his actual office, which had the quality of a room that has been occupied by the same person for 35 years and reflects every decision that person has made in that time. Framed photographs of the facility at various stages of its history. A model of the original machine shop on the credenza. The particular smell of a room where serious work has been done for a long time. Gerald Caldwell was 71 years old and looked like a man who had spent 35 years on a production floor and was not embarrassed by it. He stood when I came in. He shook my hand. He did not make me wait. Patricia sat beside me. Derek was at the far end of the table, which told me everything I needed to know about where the power in the room had shifted. Gerald said, Sonia. I owe you an apology. You do, I said. He nodded. He had the quality of someone who has decided that the most efficient path through a difficult conversation is directness. I made a decision about operational leadership that I did not vet carefully enough. The consequences of that decision have been significant. I'd like to discuss how to correct it. I have conditions, I said. I assumed you would. I opened my folder. Director of Operations, I said. Not Senior Safety Director. Director of Operations, with authority over safety, production floor management, and compliance. Reporting directly to you, not through any intermediate executive. Gerald wrote something. Derek, at the far end of the table, looked at the surface of the table. Base salary of $195,000. That is 2.5 times my previous base. Signing bonus of $50,000. Profit-sharing participation at 3% of annual net, beginning in year 2. Gerald wrote. Did not object. Full authority over safety protocols, production floor procedures, and compliance documentation. No modifications to established safety procedures without my written approval. No exceptions. Understood, Gerald said. Ray Kowalski is promoted to senior floor supervisor with a 20% salary increase and a written acknowledgement from you personally that his conduct during this period, specifically his decision to shut down line 2 on the day the pre-shift checklist was made optional, was correct and commendable. Gerald looked at Derek for exactly 1 second. Then back at me. Done. Diane Cho is promoted to compliance manager with a 25% salary increase and the same written acknowledgement. Done, Gerald said. And I said, a formal incident report. Complete documentation of every protocol change made between my termination date and the OSHA inspection, who authorized each change and the specific violation each change produced. entered into the company record, and made available to OSHA as part of the abatement documentation. The room went quiet. Derek said that report would essentially be a documented record of he stopped. Of what happened, I said. Yes, Sonia. His voice had the quality of someone who is trying to find a version of the next sentence that doesn't make things worse. A report like that, in the company record, creates liability exposure that. Derek. I looked at him directly. 23 violations created the liability exposure. The report documents it accurately. Those are different things. He looked at Gerald. Gerald looked at me. The report will be completed. I'll review it personally. Derek said, Gerald. Derek. Gerald's voice had the particular quality of a man who has been patient for a long time and has finished being patient. That's enough. Derek looked at the table. I looked at Gerald. Then we have an agreement. He extended his hand. I shook it. Patricia, beside me, made a small sound. The sound of someone who has been in many rooms like this one and knows that the handshake is the moment everything that came before it becomes permanent. I walked out of Gerald Caldwell's office at 11:08 a.m. with a signed term sheet and a start date of the following Monday. I drove home. Called my daughter. She asked how it went. Well, I said. How well? Director of Operations, I said. She was quiet for 2 seconds. Then, I'm coming over. Bring food, I said. I'll make coffee. Monday morning. I arrived at Caldwell Industrial Manufacturing at 5:45 a.m. 15 minutes before my usual 6 a.m. walkthrough time. Old habits. I put on my hard hat in the parking lot. The gravel crunched under my boots. The production floor hum was already audible from outside. The low mechanical sound that I had been hearing 5 days a week for 17 years, and that had been absent from my mornings for the past 3 weeks in a way I had not let myself think about too carefully. I walked through the main entrance, past the security desk, down the corridor toward the production floor. Ray was at the equipment cage near line 4. He was holding a clipboard. He looked up when he heard my boots on the concrete. He did not say anything for a moment. He just looked at me with the expression of a man who has been holding a building together with both hands for 3 weeks and has just been told he can put it down. Then he said, hard hat. Hard hat, I confirmed. He turned back to his clipboard. Line 2 pre-shift checklist is ready for your sign-off. Lines 4 and 5 are cleared for restart pending your walkthrough. I'll start with line 2, I said. I know, he said. I set it up that way. Diane was at her desk when I came through the compliance office. She had the Caldwell Safety Compliance Matrix open on her screen and a red folder on her desk that I recognized as the Certification Renewal Tracking folder. She said, 43 renewals. 31 are still current. 12 have lapsed. I've already contacted the certification vendors for the 12. 3 can be completed on-site this week. Schedule them, I said. Already done, she said. I scheduled them this morning. Before you got here. I looked at her for a moment. Diane. I know, she said. And she went back to her screen and started working, which is the highest compliment Diane Cho knows how to give. Lines 2, 4, and 5 came back online that week after the abatement documentation was submitted and OSHA confirmed the violations had been corrected. The restart required a full equipment inspection on each line, a certification verification for every operator, and a documented pre-shift checklist run witnessed by me personally. It took 4 days. It was supposed to take 4 days. Anyone who had been paying attention for 17 years would have known it would take 4 days. The Meridian Build Group contract was reinstated in full 6 weeks after I returned. Stuart Haynes called me directly to confirm it. He said, "We heard you were back." "I'm back," I said. "Good," he said. "That's why we're reinstating." 8 months later, Caldwell Industrial Manufacturing looked like a company that had survived something serious and decided to become more careful because of it. The Caldwell Integrated Safety Governance Protocol was implemented in May. It was a board-level document, the first safety governance document in the company's history to require board approval, that established mandatory pre-shift inspections on all lines regardless of incident history, daily chemical monitoring with automatic escalation if logs were not completed by 9 a.m., a certification renewal tracking system with 90-day, 60-day, and 30-day automated alerts, and a provision that no safety protocol could be modified, suspended, or eliminated without written approval from the Director of Operations and a documented review by an external safety consultant. The last provision was my addition. I had written it specifically so that what Derek Callum had done on the morning of March 14th could never be done again by anyone, regardless of their title or their relationship to the person who owned the building. Ray Kowalski was senior floor supervisor. He had rebuilt the line supervisor team's relationship with the safety protocols in the particular way that Ray does everything, without announcement, without ceremony, by simply showing up every day and doing the work correctly and expecting the people around him to do the same. The line supervisors who had told Derek they found the lockout-tagout procedures disruptive to production flow were now running those procedures without complaint, because Ray had the quality of someone whose expectations are not negotiable and whose respect is worth having. He had also, on his own initiative, started a monthly floor safety meeting that was separate from the formal compliance review. Informal. No documentation required. Just the floor supervisors and Ray, talking through what they had seen that week and what they were watching for. He called it the Thursday check-in. I had not asked him to do it. He had figured it out himself. Diane was compliance manager. She had rebuilt the Caldwell safety compliance matrix from the ground up, incorporating the lessons of the OSHA inspection into a new version that flagged not just current violations, but conditions trending toward violation. Equipment showing where patterns that historically preceded failures, chemical storage areas approaching but not yet exceeding permissible limits, certification renewals approaching the 60-day alert threshold. She called it predictive compliance. She had presented it to Gerald Caldwell in June. He had asked her 3 questions. She had answered all 3 and then walked him through 2 scenarios the system had already caught before they became problems. After the meeting, Gerald stopped me in the hallway. "She's exceptional," he said. "I know," I said. "You built that team." "They built themselves," I said. "I just documented it." Derek Callum was still at Caldwell Industrial Manufacturing. He was no longer plant director. His title was now Director of Business Development, a role that had been created specifically to redirect his energy toward client relationships and away from operational decisions. He had no authority over the production floor, no authority over safety protocols, and no authority over any decision that required knowledge of how a manufacturing facility actually functions. He wore better shoes now. I noticed that. Still a sport coat, but the shoes were appropriate for the environment. Small progress. He was not my problem. He had not been my problem since the morning I sat in the Caldwell Industrial parking lot with a 41-page OSHA complaint and a 2 o'clock call with my attorney. The formal incident report was completed in April and entered into the company record. It documented every protocol change Derek had made between March 14th and the OSHA inspection, the specific violation each change produced, and the timeline of events from my termination to the citation report. Gerald had reviewed it personally, as he had promised. Total financial impact of the 3-week period between my termination and my return, $4.1 million. That number included the $3.2 million in OSHA fines, the legal costs, the production losses from the 6-week partial shutdown of lines 2, 4, and 5, the cost of the abatement process, and the emergency certification training for the 12 employees whose renewals had lapsed. $4.1 million. In 3 weeks. From a man who had called safety protocols productivity killers. The $520,000 in annual workers' compensation savings that my protocols had been generating for 6 years was not in that number. It did not need to be. The $4.1 million was sufficient to make the point. My life outside the building was better in ways I had not fully anticipated. I took a real vacation in July. 7 days. I checked my phone once a day, because I am who I am, and nothing required my immediate attention, which is the specific quality of a team that has been built correctly. A team that runs when you're not in the room is a team that has been built to last. I went to my father's 71st birthday dinner. I had missed his 70th because of a chemical storage audit. I did not miss his 71st. He asked me how work was going. "Better," I said. He looked at me the way fathers look at daughters when they suspect the word better is doing a lot of work. "How much better?" Director of Operations, I said. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Your mother would have liked that title." "I know," I said. "I thought about her when I negotiated it. I think about that Monday morning sometimes." The calendar notification. 8:15 a.m. Conference room Delta. No subject line. The particular quality of a notification that tells you everything before you open it. I had walked to that meeting with 17 years of signed inspection logs and a facility that had gone 9 years without a single OSHA citation. I had walked out of it with a manila folder and a box for my desk and a 41-page complaint that I had been drafting since February 14th. They had called my protocols productivity killers. The protocols were the reason 23 violations had not existed before March 14th. The protocols were the reason the injury rate was 1.1 instead of 8.4. The protocols were the reason Meridian Build Group had been ordering from Caldwell for 11 years and had reinstated their contract the moment they heard I was back. The protocols were not productivity killers. They were the reason there was still a production floor to be productive on. If you've ever been underestimated at work, I hope this story reminds you that quiet preparation always beats loud arrogance. If this resonated, like and subscribe. I share stories like this every week. And remember, the person calling your standards a burden is usually the person who has never had to live with the consequences of not having them.